Hello, everyone. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you're dialing in from. We're just at the top of the hour and going to get kicked off in just a moment or two, allowing people just a moment to get dialed in. So welcome. For the folks who have joined, let us know where you're dialing in from in the chat. The chat should be open. Would love to see where the representation is. And I'll jump in as well. See someone calling in from Indiana. I'm a Midwesterner myself, so no longer, but good to see that. Boston, a little snow on the ground. Actually, a little snow on the ground here too in London, which is not the norm.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, it is colder than we're used to. I grew up in Michigan, but you forget how, I'm just not used to it anymore. I've become weak whenever it gets below about 40 degrees. So. See Columbus, Ohio, North Carolina, a couple from the Bay Area. Welcome, welcome. For the folks who are just joining, we're about to get kicked off in probably about 30 seconds, just allowing people to get logged on. And we'll just, in the meantime, just pop in chat where you're calling in from. It looks like we've got pretty good representation across the US. Few coming in from Europe, Lexington, Kentucky, Alabama. Okay, yeah, we're hitting just about all the states so far. Very good. Excellent. So welcome, everybody. I know it's about 2 minutes after, so probably a good time to start getting kicked off. We probably have one or two more, or a few more folks who are going to join us in the next minute or two. But I say let's get going. I'm joined here today by Mary Charles as well, and we'll just kind of get things going as those last few people dial in. We're going to talk today about something that's very timely, and probably if you see what's up on my screen already, you're probably thinking this is relevant to me right now. We're going to talk about how we can amplify success before, during, and after a sales kickoff. And we're going to talk about a few ideas about what we can do at each stage. A couple housekeeping things. Feel free to keep the chat going. I believe the Q&A panel is open as well, but feel free to pop any questions in chat so that we can get that peer feedback from other people who have joined the call. And if you're looking for any of those thoughts, we'll be happy to jump in on that as well. So we'll keep an eye on that chat as well. So what we'll cover today, thinking about that sales kickoff, we're going to talk about how we can really handle this from start to finish and carry that momentum forward. We think about how we can not just use that as that kind of one-time event, and how we can capture some of that knowledge and create really positive content leaving SKO, learning from our peers, and what strategies we can use to craft some of that SKO game plan. I'm joined today by Mary Charles. Mary, I'll let you introduce yourself first, and if you have any other comments as we get going here,
Sure.
then I'll do the same.
Okay, well, I'm happy to be back this quarter talking about this very timely topic. I'm Mary Charles. I'm the Senior Director of Sales Enablement at Allego, which is a leading sales enablement platform. And I've been in enablement for, 18 years now, a really long time, and 4 years in my current role. So lots of changes in the last few years, and I'm excited to talk about this topic today because I think this is the 18th year I've planned to kick off. So that's a lot of kickoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've probably seen it from a lot of different angles, a lot of different approaches. So we'll be curious to hear a little more about that. My name is Michael Hostler, and have coming from FIS, or Fidelity National Information Services, and I head up our global sales learning. So I've been working really closely with the groups at our company as well, figuring out what exactly our goals are around kickoff and how we're going to be successful in that. So I don't have 18 under my belt yet, but I'm going on about 8 or 9 now, which is kind of hard to believe, now that I think about that. Yeah. So we'll be really curious to hear from the folks who on the call, as well as we talk about some of these topics, because I'm sure there's an awful lot of experience from an awful lot of industries, approaches, and as we've seen over the last couple of years, how we've approached this in-person, hybrid, and virtual. It was actually how I want to kick off the webinar and get that feedback from folks on the line and hear a little bit about your upcoming sales kickoff. and if that's happening fully remote, hybrid, in person, or if you're still figuring it out. So we just opened up a poll and would love to see your input there.
I have a prediction, but I won't say it.
Yeah, me too.
For ours, Michael, we're doing in person for the US employees, but our UK employees will be virtual remote. So we have a hybrid this year.
We're
But
doing
this
a little
in
in
person.
between.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, first in person, yes. So we're doing a global, we're doing some regional kickoffs, but we have some key kind of main stage stuff that will be run a bit more of that hybrid setting. So it's kind of a little bit of both.
Oh, that's funny. We're actually, our UK team is having with our CEO their own company kickoff first, but their sales will be virtual. So we've got a lot of things that are different this year. All right.
I'm seeing some things coming. We'll give you just another minute there as well.
Yeah, it looks like fully in person, bigger number than the last few years for sure, 44%, and then a good number hybrid, and then some who are fully remote. But so it looks like in person, hybrid, and some who are still figuring it out. I'm guessing they're not having kickoff in January, or they probably have an idea now, but who knows?
Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting. That's what I expected to see, because I think people are really excited for that opportunity to get back in person. But no matter what you're doing, I think each of these different approaches comes with its own challenges. And that's kind of where we'll start the conversation today around that, as well as those current challenges for SKOs. So, I'll turn over to you, Marion, if you have any kind of thoughts, and just kind of having probably seen well, it sounds like you're going through the hybrid right now, and some in person and virtual last year. What are your thoughts when it comes to those overall challenges?
Yeah, I think we always, no matter what kind of kickoff you're doing, it's always the event to inspire and motivate the sales team to perform in the next year and get aligned on goals and all those things. But really, there's a lot more pressure because of the last bullet on here, a budget and time out of the field. Those things are always pressure, but it seems like more so this year. I know we're having a half day in person instead of a full day. So really figuring out what can you do in that live session time, and what can you do in the remote session or asynchronously? What can you do outside of the event, right? So that's not just that one half day, full day, whatever folks are doing. And then there's a lot of always the thought like, oh, we're in person, we should do a lot of training. Let's do lots and lots of training and cram as much as we can in. I think some people might be facing that. So that's a challenge with balancing that out with having people together maybe for the first time in a long time and giving them an opportunity to talk and collaborate, which is what they really want. Hybrid audience, I think that's going to be a big challenge this year versus all virtual the last few years, which was not as much of a challenge. And then, I think those are all of them, but I think that it's a good combination of things that's different for many of us than last year.
Yeah, and I think you called that point out too, that balance of training, and we kind of note it here as well, versus that collaboration and idea sharing. And I think it's really funny because we've asked our salespeople before too, and everybody goes, no, we don't want training, we don't want formalized training. But then you ask them some other questions, they go, well, yeah, absolutely, we do want to learn some stuff. We do want to learn how other people are being successful and what we can do to be more successful. And it feels a little bit contradictory, but I think when we dive a little bit into that, it kind of speaks to the experience they're looking for at that SKO, whether it's virtual, in person, or hybrid, the experience they're looking for and how we kind of present that when it comes to that overcoming that challenge.
Yeah, and I know in our prep for this, and I'm sure we're going to talk about it throughout the presentation, is really thinking about the difference between training and learning. So we'll pick that up in the next few slides, I'm sure. That's something I know I've been thinking a lot about.
Yeah, and be curious if anybody has any other challenges that kind of come top to mind. Let us know in the chat as we have this conversation as well. Would love to hear about that, if any of these jump out to you, or if there's other things as well. But I think it comes back to these challenges really come up and come full focus when we think about what are our actual objectives, because sometimes we're going to see that the challenges get in the way. And a lot of times, we just talked about that, right? The training versus learning. We absolutely do want learning out of Sales Kickoff. We want motivation, we want connection, we want recognition. So how does this, how is this impacted by some of those challenges, and how do we change our approach depending on the challenges we know we're going to come across? So Mary, you did ask me about this when we were talking earlier as well, about what I thought would be kind of the big ones to jump out. We really agreed on that, what it really meant for leaders, that sales kickoff objectives, as well as what it meant for reps and what their objectives were. And I think we agreed. You remember what those were?
Connection was not, I think, number one on my list that I thought for sales, I know for sales leaders and for reps being able to connect, especially if they're in person, but having that opportunity is probably the biggest one for us, being with people being back in person.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's really that connection is big. For some people, it's the first time in what are we going on now? 3 years, I think, to be back in person. That motivation behind that as well is really important for leaders to kind of rally the troops, if you will, and think about how they're actually going to set the tone for the next 12 months.
Yeah, and it's interesting. There are a couple of comments on the chat that are really helpful.
Yeah.
One of the challenges around managing expectations from various stakeholders and what can be achieved. We are going to be talking about that and what can you do pre, during, and post. And then also the follow-up, which I know is always a challenge for me as well. Like after the event, how do you keep that momentum going? So we're going to talk about some of that as well in this session.
Yeah, because it feels so good in the moment, right? And then it's like everybody kind of goes back their separate ways. Like even virtually, when you shut off, it's kind of like, oh, that event is over, and we have to like carry that momentum on. So let's kind of break that down. Let's start with that pre-kickoff, what we can do to get ourselves in like the right place to be successful. Because if we don't do this right, then it doesn't matter, right? At the end of the day, you're not going to have things to carry away from that as well.
Right. And I think here I put this question in here because it's like, what can we do before the event to build excitement and maximize the effectiveness of the in-person time, if you have in-person time, or the live virtual event, whatever you're doing the actual kickoff day. So let's go to the next slide and start talking about what can we do before kickoff to make sure we set ourselves up for success. I think the first one, and this goes back to the comment from Damon around alignment with the team that's has the most at stake in the kickoff, which is sales leadership and the sales team. So aligning with sales leadership, I think, is kind of number one. If you can align on how is this year going to be different? What can we achieve in this short period of time? What must we achieve if we have people in person or for this live event to get to those objectives around whether it's connection, motivation, getting clarity for the year ahead, any new initiatives, et cetera. But really thinking about what can we do before, during, and after, and helping leadership think about that as well. And not just let's jam as much as we can, and if you into the live event. And I think one of the things, if you and Michael, you and I had talked about it. If you ask your team, I'd be curious for people to post in the chat. If you asked your sales team, what's most important about sales kickoff? I know that probably 90% of the time over the last 18 years, I know what the answer has been from salespeople, like what was the most valuable? What did you want to get out of it? What did you get out of it? Michael, what do you think when you ask your team that, because you've done surveys after kickoffs, what do they say?
We always hear that they want to see what the most successful peers are doing, right? They want to learn from their peers, and they want that like takeaway. And we talked about, even the different tenure of rep and how it affects that, especially those folks who have been around for a while and they maybe have had success in the past, and they're looking how to even take it up a notch from there. And that's something we hear an awful lot.
Yeah, and Teresa posted sharing with peers. Definitely that time for hearing from others, and then some time to talk and collaborate and have that kind of downtime as well. Those are the two things that people want the most. They want to be able to talk to their peers and hear from them about what's working and what did the top reps do differently than other reps? How did they succeed? And that's always the top of mind. And time to talk to peers that are in the same role, I think, is also an important one. So one of the things, if you're doing any kind of surveying of the sales team ahead of time, asking them for, what's top of mind for them, what do they want to hear at the kickoff, but also asking them, what would a successful kickoff be for them? And I'm guessing most of the time they're going to say that sharing with peers. The reason I talk about doing that survey, Michael, if someone's having trouble getting, whether it's sales leadership or sales and marketing, on the same page of, hey, we can't just pack a bunch of presentations into this time, that survey certainly could help justify that kind of content, the more you can have sharing from peers, the more the value the team will get out of it.
Yeah, I'd say that's absolutely a challenge and has been for us in the past as well, is that we want to give, like, look, we want to get those messages out. People have important things to share. But when you put it too much back to back and everybody gets, 30 minutes on stage and it's just the audience in our sales audience feels like they're just being talked at for 3 days straight. There's that point where they kind of just shut off and heaven forbid, skip a session, right? And
Yes.
sneak out for a minute, right?
I haven't had that problem. I'm in a smaller organization now, but when I worked for large companies like IBM, et cetera, that was a problem where people just wouldn't be in the room because it was a lot of talking. So that leads me to the next couple of points on here. So how do you address that, right? So pre-kickoff, involving other stakeholders. So we know marketing, product marketing, in our case, customer success, other groups that are adjacent to sales, sales engineers, et cetera, might all want to communicate some information to the team or tell them, hey, here are the great marketing programs we're going to do to support you. And salespeople want to know that information, but that don't necessarily need to have that covered the day of the event. So what we did when we had virtual kickoff, and what we're still going to do this year, is we run something called Run Up to Kickoff. And for each day, a week before the event, roughly 5 days, we do this, we push out some material to the team that first we start with a video from somebody from our sales leadership team, or it could be a subject matter expert, but we do a welcome video every morning that says, hey, it's Run Up to Kickoff, here's day 1, here's day 2. And each morning our team gets a video from one of these sales leaders. And that's like, whoa, I got to pay attention, first of all. So it's not all coming from me. Although I did do one last year and I had my son in the video, and that was very popular. So we talk about what's going to come up for today. And what's happening is they will have something to watch asynchronously on their own time. And I put a lunch block on their calendar just so they don't forget, but that they watch that short video. When I say short, I mean 10 minutes or less. And that way they can consume that information on their own time at their own pace. They can rewind, if people still say that. They can replay it back to the information, get the information. They're not forced to consume all of that at one time, either sitting in a room or on a virtual session. And we've gotten very positive feedback. People liked it because it spread it out over the week. And some of those really important topics that would have gotten lost if we had shoved them all into one day are then covered. And then if somebody starts new within a month after that, and I want them to hear some of those things, I can push those videos to them as well. But people really like it. In our case, they also post comments on the videos, and we get some collaboration going there, but it's helped us tremendously not have that pressure.
Yeah, you mentioned a good thought, a couple of good things there, right? It's kind of like smaller kind of pieces, a bit more bite-sized to get in that run up, and also that opportunity to have that content. Like, isn't it a shame that you to have 10 new joiners join the month after kickoff, and you're just kind of like, well, sorry, you should have been here last month. It was great. We shared all sorts of great ideas, but you have some of that as well.
Yeah.
And I see some people jumping in chat as well, saying they're designing a run up right now with countdown messages, clues to the keynote speaker. Oh, that's fun. So a little bit of like gamification, a little bit of mystery behind it. Yeah, keep people engaged.
Oh, that's good. That somebody else also, Shelby, talking about they do a get ready week for kickoff, putting in updates in the video, anything that would be very sit and listen. So our virtual in-person is for collaboration. Fantastic. Shelby, that's exactly what I'm advocating as well, that happens. So that's great.
I think it helps our stakeholders too, like this type of thing, getting people pumped up and ready for what's going to be on stage, and those people who maybe don't have that on stage spot, it's a little bit more fairness to them instead of speaking to, again, a room that's maybe a little bit half asleep because they're the fourth in a line of 10 speakers. They really get that focus from the audience.
Yeah. And the other thing we've done to make sure people watch and pay attention, we've opened our kickoff event with like a Kahoot game, which was a quiz about all the stuff that we covered the week before, and give out a little prize. So make a little game of it, and people like to win, people like to compete. So you can always do that as well, just to make sure they know, hey, there's something in this I should pay attention to. So that's worked really well, and really get the sales leadership team engaged too. If you have some people with a good sense of humor, they can always add an element of fun to those videos. So I highly recommend getting them involved so that they have an interest in it and that they're promoting it to the team as well.
Yeah, and in this, go ahead. Sorry, Mary.
Yeah. Go ahead, Michael.
I was going to say, in this content, this video content that you kind of call out here as well, as kind of some of the lead up. If now is good, I'll kind of switch over, because that next question I think comes to, where do we get some of this stuff, right? How do we like bring some of this stuff in? Because I'm guessing if many people on the call, you might say, I'm kind of running the show here. I have one or two people on my team. So how do we kind of amplify again that success and then pull in and crowdsource some of that content as a part of that run up to kickoff? Now, I think you're doing some of this already. Is that right, Mary?
Yeah, we've done, so a couple of things that we've done and that we'll do. One is, it was on the previous slide, but we had our president of the company interview one of our customers and do a pre-recorded interview. The only time that person was available to do that was a Saturday. And so imagine if we weren't that flexible, if we weren't doing a pre-recorded interview, we wouldn't have had that opportunity. So we were able to record that ahead of time and break it into chapters and share that with the team and share it as part of information for future new hires, et cetera, or anybody that missed the event. So that really is important to think about. How can you have a variety of content? So one, people love to hear from customers. I know for us, Michael, I presume that's for your case too. Our salespeople are just like, we want to hear from a customer. Why did they buy from us? Why did they leave a competitor? What's the secret sauce that they saw in our company? But also to get content from other sales reps ahead of time to curate. So what are best practices for selling that new product? How did you book the most meetings? Whatever the top performers have done, being able to show what good looks like. And it could be reps, it could be SDRs, it could be somebody who's done a dynamite demonstration if you're selling a product, software product, for example, and sales leaders, right? So showing what good looks like and sharing those. So not only at the event are they hearing from peers, but before the event, that content involves, some win stories and things like that. So people really are excited to participate and hear it. And then if you can run a contest, who's sharing the best tip, put people into a drawing so you get everybody to participate. That's what we've been doing lately. And getting that ahead of time, then you can curate that and share that out as part of your run up to kickoff. You could play a video during the kickoff, especially if you're virtual, to kind of break things up. So all sorts of things you could do with that information and curating.
Yeah, we've done that before, and we've tied it into some of our initiatives that we knew were going to be happening that year about the type of messaging we wanted to get out to our clients. And look, I think sometimes we think of sales people as just the coin operated machine, right? But there was a lot of impact and a lot of excitement around, and we're at a larger company as well, having your video played right before the CEO walks out on stage, and as an example of what good looks like. I think that people really did buy into that. It wasn't just around again, that coin operation, right? I think it was really around that brand within the company as well, and a little bit of having that opportunity to have that platform for individuals. So yeah, and I always like to say, go ahead. Yeah,
I was going to say, it's a form of recognition, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think we make sure to always call this out when we ever do anything like this as well, is to have fun and get creative. Like, I think there's different types of activities you can do. Some call for more fun and creativity than others, depending on what you're asking. But we always encourage people to, that YouTube, not Hollywood. Mary, you mentioned that a little bit ago as well, some of the videos that you've done and pushed out to your team to encourage it. We did the same thing last year at SKO. I think I did it from my phone. I was walking my dog in the park and said, hey, I'm excited about SKO. I want to hear what you're excited about. You respond to this video, let me know. And my whole idea behind that was not trying to do it in the studio, right? Because then people feel that, well, I don't know if I want to respond to that video because I don't have the right setup to do that. But when they see the expectations around that, you get a lot more of that genuine curated content leading up to the event.
And if you get any kind of example or participation from either a top rep early on, say, hey, here's top performing rep, and she's going to talk about something that she did. Now, what did you do? Or if you get your sales leader, I think that's really powerful. Get them to do a quick video on what they're looking forward to about kickoff, build that excitement, ask the team for any participation ahead of time, let them know the run-up is coming. All of those things get people interested and motivated and excited about what's actually going to happen at the event, I think.
Yeah, and this is great. See, I think we're already starting to figure out ways to kind of pull in some of that content to get people excited for the event, and also things that might live beyond the event as well. So I think we're starting to create that library, and it kind of transitions to that opportunity to how do we use this when we actually do get to the in-person kickoff? How do we continue this momentum? And what do we want to do if we're in person? And I guess, we talk about in person here as well. We'll talk about virtual or hybrid in a minute as well. But I think probably some of this we can use in kind of whatever your scenario may be. But thinking about how we continue that whole theme of that crowdsourcing and bringing that in and hearing from other people, that peer-to-peer learning is a part of the kickoff as well.
Yeah, that I think taking talked about a rep-centric approach when I was thinking about this webinar, is that if you advocate for the reps in the planning of the event and you know that they want the collaboration, they don't want so much top down, and you have an alternative for some short messaging videos that they can watch before the event, then you can sort of meet the needs of a variety of groups of people. But the most important thing I think during the event is that it's rep-centric, meaning it's not just talked out the whole time, that the topics are what's top of mind for them in a format that they like. So whether that means small breakouts by role, hearing from their peers, not having an overload of content, because that's the temptation. I mean, if I look back to like one of the first kickoffs I ever planned 18 years ago, I remember we planned like 5 things we were going to do and everybody was in person. We got to like topic number 2 and then the sales leader just let it go and go and go. We never got to the other topics. Like, it was such a huge mistake. I was like, oh boy, that was bad. But allowing that time, plenty of time for networking, collaboration, whether it's in the morning, at the lunch, we're doing something where we're off site for half the day, but we're doing small breakouts back at the office afterwards. Like, we really have to kind of think outside the box, say, what do salespeople want and need? And how can we achieve that during the event to make it most productive for them?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you see the best stuff come from those situations as well, because people, there's so we if I'm assuming most people have this experience at sales kickoff as well, is that you have so much experience in the room. Every situation that you could possibly imagine with a client, with whatever it is that you're selling, someone there has probably been through that experience, and someone there is probably going through that experience or might come across it, and just pulling those out. And it never happens if it's just kind of all sat in an auditorium kind of hearing things. So providing those opportunities, and that's not to take away from the idea that we want to understand what the go forward vision is and share that that leadership content as well. It's just not falling into the trap where that's kind of all we expect from a kickoff.
Yeah.
And some of the, yeah.
No, I was going to say that's absolutely true. It's like flipping that paradigm, that it's not just telling, but also that there's good learning that goes on, even if it's not formal, structured content, if you will.
Yeah, and I think we want to try to capture this stuff. I know some of the topics we call out here: the competition, win stories, deal strategy, customer success. We want it to live beyond just those groups as well. So I don't know, you, Mary, if you've done anything in particular with some of your kickoffs to kind of help that stuff. I think we'll get to it in a little bit as well, but kind of, we do the small breakout groups and that sort of thing. I think it's about making sure somebody's at least acknowledging that and taking some of those ideas and feeding them back. Have you done anything creative?
Yeah, well, we're going to try something this year. While for those of us who are in person, I'm going to collaborate with our sales leaders and other leaders within the group to do something we're going to call Amplify Success, which is this big theme that I've been working on for the last few months and trying to gather amplifying success and gather stories from our field. So during the event, I'm not exactly sure logistically how I'm working it, but during the event, I want people to think about, if they hear stories, at lunch or before, or the night before, or the day at the company meeting, whatever, if there's something that happens in one of those small group breakouts that's really valuable and we want to capture it, I want them to record a quick video on the spot. Now, we're fortunate because we have our own Allego platform to do that. They can just do it right from their phone. But I want to figure out a way for the leaders to prompt that. And I don't know whether that's going to be a physical card, hey, you're getting an Amplify Success card. Make sure you record that story before you leave the event. That's what I'm thinking. So that's something we're gonna try this year. And anytime I hear something good, I'm gonna say to somebody, "Great, amplify success. Let's do that." And we'll see what happens. But I want to capture those moments, those nuggets of information that always come up. What do you
Yeah, and
think,
I'm really
Mike?
curious. I'm really curious to hear from people, in chat as well. Like, what are you doing? Have you experienced that in the past before, where you have these great ideas come out of these sessions, and then you think a month later, you're like, whatever happened to that? Nothing ever came of that. Is anybody doing anything creative to kind of pull those ideas together, to capture those ideas from sessions? And yeah, we've tried a variety of things there as well. A lot of times, I think it comes down to making sure that somebody has that kind of role, because I think sometimes when we don't kind of push those roles out to people and say, you are responsible for this, just that's going to be one of the core things you do, they might default to whatever they think needs to happen or whatever they're most comfortable with. So making sure is that assignment of role on your team. Maybe it's you yourself, and just putting that on one of your checklists and saying, this is one of my goals from Sales Kickoff, is not to let that conversation and those ideas be brought to the surface and then die before they get to be carried on or captured or shared with everybody else.
Maybe I will designate myself or someone else in the company to be the Amplify Success ambassador and collect those stories. Maybe that's what I'll do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I see some things coming in from chat as well. Capturing ideas using things like parking lot ideas, having team members help to take it down. So yeah, exactly. So kind of turning it back around, we're talking about this peer-to-peer collaboration and using that as a part of it as well, whether it's our team. Sometimes there are leaders within sales we can work with and collaborate with as well.
Yeah, and I think the big thing is going to be in the post, right? Which we're going to talk about in a minute, is post session, because I've done that too, where we collect all those ideas and it's in a document. It's like, well, what happens afterwards? So I think that's really where the big challenge comes in. But before we get to that, I know we're going to talk a little bit about anything we could come up with for people who are doing hybrid or virtual, because I think hybrid is probably the biggest challenge.
Sure.
You've got people online and people in the room. What are you going to do? So we have on here some ideas for virtual or hybrid. One is to take some of the pressure off using some pre-recorded content, not a 20-minute pre-recorded content, but something that's short, a 2 or 3 minute kind of interstitial. Is that what you call it? Interstitial. One of those little things that kind of pops up before a break, after a break, mid-session to kind of get people re-engaged. So some pre-recorded content that you can play can take some pressure off of getting presenters lined up and making sure everything's running smoothly. Assigning a monitor for the remote employees. I have another person on my team. I'm fortunate to have someone, and she's going to be logged in and participating virtually so that she can monitor that and facilitate like questions that are asked in the room. We're fortunate that we're going to be in a room that at a university, so it was set up for during COVID when they had virtual classrooms. So that has the camera that moves and all that good stuff. So I think you have to invest in that technology for wherever you're having your meeting, to make sure that people can hear and see as much as possible, and that somebody is online monitoring that and helping that team feel engaged and bringing out their questions and comments as well. So those are a couple of the big ones, and facilitating remote participation, not having someone assigned, I think will make sure that we don't forget about them, because I know I'll forget.
Yeah, I think there's so many opportunities when it comes to all the research we see for that hybrid, those hybrid environments. The people online, it's all too often, especially if we're in person, we give them way too many opportunities to disconnect, right? We almost kind of give it up to them. It might be the tech glitch, it might be this, it might be that, it might be we're going to take a break and it's still kind of rolling, and they're like, okay, yeah, should I get up and leave my desk? And really thinking about that and thinking about that experience from their shoes. And I absolutely love the idea here too, the breakout rooms that have facilitators, especially for those people who are virtual, who are in that virtual environment, whether it's all virtual or the hybrid, where you have that virtual group kind of monitoring that. And we found that to be very positive in those situations as well, to have that person on, even if our whole team is in person, making sure someone's joining virtually or kind of putting themselves in the hybrid shoes, so that if there are any issues along the way or challenges, or the sound quality, heaven forbid, is for whatever reason it isn't great for a moment, we have somebody who's kind of reporting that stuff back and making sure they can smooth and problem solve along the way.
Yeah, and I see a comment from Teresa. She said they've set up social spaces for the event, and then had people share their ideas and pictures and thoughts there. I love that, and brainstorms. And evals all in the social space during the SKO. So that helps people stay connected, which you said is one of the big ones, and collaborating. Tim wants to know, do you have any, and I don't know, Michael, I think you may have done something like this. Do you have any guidance for holding concurrent same day SKOs that happen in 2 continents with some shared virtual time together? Depends how far those continents are apart, I think.
I was going to say, yeah, can depend on how far the continents are, absolutely. And we that is one thing we take into consideration as well, making sure, and we've done that in the past before, just making sure that time zone wise, we don't make anybody feel excluded just from the fact that this is at 1 a.m. in the morning, so making sure we have opportunities for everybody throughout SKO to make sure it matches at least close to their working hours. The other thing that we do as well is it's really important to have that in-region presence if you can in some way. If you are back in office, I know not everybody is back in office, but hosting some sort of session together, that watch session together, so you still feel that camaraderie, that peer-to-peer, a post-session in-person conversation off the back of that. Or if you're not all in the office, at least having that regional group afterwards who's able to have some sort of guided facilitation as follow-up to that, instead of just kind of the video camera kind of saying that's all and back to your day and you kind of forget about it. Because I think what happens there is you lose that overall momentum of kickoff that we're talking about. So we have done that, I know, at our company as well, and we've just been very strategic about making sure there's some senior leaders, and not just any old volunteer who might just be able to facilitate that discussion. I'm not saying there aren't people who are capable, but really putting some clout around that as well, and having somebody, a senior executive, responsible for that.
Yeah, that's really critical. Again, I think that's a pretty common theme here, is getting your sponsors, right, for this event that are going to help make it a success, from the planning to during the event and post-event, getting all of those folks lined up so that everybody's working towards the same kind of goals.
Excellent. Yeah, and I see some chat going on around too. It's kind of going back to the virtual spaces and physical spaces and platforms and things that people are doing to capture some of that, the social spaces at Kickoff. So thank you for that feedback in chat too. Just pulling that from the trade show booths or online networks and things like that. So really good advice.
And the lunch table topics. I've tried that in the past. I haven't had success with it. People just want to, we've done working lunch and all sorts of things, and people just want to go and do their thing. That's kind of what I have found, but I would be interested to hear if that works, if somebody makes that work.
Yeah, and it might even be a separate event too. You could still grab that idea and do it somewhere in particular. If we're looking to capture we might be looking to capture specific feedback, and that might be how we drive some of that.
Yeah. All right, should we go to the
I think we're there. We've talked about what we got to do to lead up to it, what we do in the kickoff, no matter what your format is, and then post kickoff. Now, look, I think this is the one. Everybody plans for kickoff, right? We're thinking about it all the time. Everybody's at kickoff, so they're very involved in that. I'd say this is probably the toughest thing, because people finish kickoff, they're ready to take that into the real world and take it forward and start working on quotas and all that sort of stuff, and we never get their attention back. So what do we do about that? Yeah, Mary, I'll let you start.
Yeah, it's well, first thing is, before they leave, you got to get some stuff done before they leave. So when I've had success with this, when we were doing in person, where we had people physically write, and not physically write, but put in a G sheet. We said, what was your key takeaways? We did it. We had 2 days, and we did it at the end of each day. What were the key takeaways for you? And then what action items are you going to take? What are you going to start to do differently or continue to do based on what you heard here? And then have managers revisit that with their teams 3 weeks later. Say, hey, remember what we talked about? How's that coming along? Are you following through on that? But also asking them, they're getting their feedback forms and stuff filled out electronically before they leave the event. Because everybody knows, if you leave it on a Thursday, Friday, people have to catch up, and then the weekend comes, and then Monday, they're like, I don't remember. I don't want to do that survey. So I think getting that feedback and soliciting that immediately at the event is an important step as well.
And I think it's important too, when you use taking advantage of those surveys. I agree 100%, by the way, that 2 days later, you're much less likely to get that feedback and that real-time feedback. And I think we can use that opportunity, as you say here, figuring out what people are going to be doing differently than before kickoff. Not just smile sheets, not just did you enjoy the event, did you connect with colleagues? Like, I'm not saying it's bad to know that stuff too, but like at the end of the day, what's that the more meaty substance that's going to help us carry these things forward and figure out where there maybe were gaps, where we were really, really successful and where there were gaps.
Yeah, and we also got feedback on like the run up to kickoff and what did people think about that. But I don't do a lot of sentiment gathering. I mean, sometimes, yeah, but if somebody's like, 5 out of 5, I loved it. It doesn't do really anything. Over the years, I've gotten lots of those where it's like you get a lot of good numbers, and then there's always that one cranky person who doesn't like the comp plan, who gives you all ones, and we've all done that. So I've gotten away from that over the last few years where I want to know more about what behavior change we can expect to see from people, what they really took away from it. And did we meet their expectations? Like, if they said, hey, most important thing to me is connection, collaboration, how did we do with that? Right. That's what I want to know.
Yeah.
Again, the rep-centric approach as well.
Yeah, sure. And then I think, when we have better data, it's going to allow us to carry forward some of those ideas and some of those messages a lot more effectively as well, I'd say, to pull in those resources. Because it goes back to, we talked about this earlier when we're doing the pre-kickoff planning. When we have data, it's a lot easier to make that case, get that buy-in, get that agreement across that sales leadership, because sometimes it can be on us a little bit too, right? I know sales, like they're invested in the idea and they're invested in what we're contributing, but it's time to start getting quota in, right? Start closing deals, start really getting into the year. And I think sometimes we can be looked at as a resource to help kind of make suggestions, prompt that action and really start the momentum going, because I don't think it's that people are resisting it as much as it gets sometimes they get sidetracked and gets pushed away.
Yeah, because they've been out of the field a couple of days. It's the beginning of the year, they got to get a fast start, and then it's like right back to what they were doing before. I think it's important to capture that, and then for us in the enablement role to help facilitate that follow-up.
Mm-hmm.
So if we see kind of some of those common themes, working with sales leadership and saying, hey, it looks like a lot of people are going to be doing their prospecting differently, or taking a different approach to how they sell this certain product and position the value, whatever it might be, and figuring out ways then to amplify that success, like go back and capture stories as they start doing that, surveying the field and finding people who then could share those stories, just like you're trying to do before the event, trying to do that at the event, but even after the event. Like, remember at kickoff, we talked about this topic. Here's Michael, who used this in the field, and Michael tells his story about, oh, you know what? The first thing I did when I went out, I stopped talking about, price, and I talked about investment or whatever it might be that you talked about at the kickoff. I think that's really, really important part of it to get people to continue that behavior change.
Sure. And I see a question come in as well, which is good. That's a good one too. What trends are you seeing in guest speakers, keynote speakers, topics, and themes? I do have a couple of thoughts. Mary, do you have any thoughts on that?
No, that we won't spend the money to have one. That's my thought is that, but so I don't have, input and any insight into like paying outside speakers and what they're talking about.
I think for us so far, and again, I might be generalizing a little, but I'm just kind of thinking over the past 7-8 years or something, the trend I've kind of seen. I think it's the expectations are a little bit higher. Yeah, someone agreed that's a trend, right? And that is such a very, very good point, especially right now. Everybody's watching the economy, all that sort of stuff. But I think the expectations of speakers are different now. It's not just a rah, 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 great story. I think it has to tie into what you're trying to do. I'm seeing people work more with maybe some of their vendors and things like that than just bringing in a keynote, again, someone who's kind of famous and has a good story, something like that, that really ties into what they're trying to do, and also includes not just a keynote talking at, but it's almost becomes more of that, how are you going to encourage that collaboration and solicit some of that stuff from the crowd and involve the crowd, so it doesn't just become one more person on stage talking at you for an hour. And I think the expectation has just been raised for those folks who are still bringing in external speakers.
Yeah, and there's a question also about, I think it's themes related to this, maybe related to the speakers, but themes in general. For us, I mean, we've done all sorts of themes I've seen over the years, but for us this year, because we're going to be together for our company kickoff and for sales, is come together is actually our theme, both
Oh,
for
yeah.
our people, our teams in the UK and the US, and how do we come together and share, collaborate, share ideas. And I think that's pretty, and also for our platform, how it's coming together. So a lot of that talk is what we're working on right now for that kind of theme. And, people are excited to be in person, really
Yeah,
excited.
let us know in chat, what other themes are people seeing for your upcoming kickoffs? Are you still deciding what is it? I'd be very curious to see if there's any trends around that.
Feel free to use Amplify Success. That's also could be a hot one.
You got to trademark that one, right?
I know. Yeah. Accelerate, there's one. Okay. It's interesting. We're in a
Yeah.
unique time, right? Going to 2023, where depending on where people are and what's going to happen in the economy, and how do you, keep growing and keep people excited and motivated, right? That depends on what industry you're in.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we talked about some of the ideas about the buy-in to carry that momentum forward. I see a couple other ideas here too around the sharing success stories, exercises on a regular cadence. I think that's a huge one, right? Anybody been in that situation? Kind of rhetorical question, but where you have a great kickoff and everybody feels like, yeah, that you hit it the nail on the head, and then we never talked about it again, right? Like, how do you get that buy-in? Where does that come from? And what does that look like? Like, what does that cadence look like?
Yeah, I think for us and for when I've seen this work well is if there's like someone mentioned about building a theme around a new product launch. I mean, you have to build in some kind of, I think, some kind of like certification or something that the team is going to do to prove that they're confident and competent and ready to go with that product launch. That's something that I would build out. We have some certification and stuff we're doing. Our big thing is like getting people to practice whatever the new thing is that we're working on, is getting them to do a lot of practice on video and then submitting that for review and certification from a manager or from myself, and getting everybody aligned around that. So there's accountability that what we talked about at kickoff and what we expect people to do, that they actually spend the time to practice and get good at that and do that. And then we capture best practices and keep sharing those to say, hey, now somebody actually used this thing or sold this new product, and now have them share that story back with the team to help keep that momentum going.
Isn't that huge too? Because it ties back right to what we've been talking about the whole time. People want to hear how their peers are being successful as well and getting that collaboration. So taking those opportunities to solicit that, the things we talked at kickoff, seeing them come to fruition, it speaks a lot. And I'd say you're right. There's the accountability there. There's the ownership from the managers and the reps. And I think it's a really big opportunity to plan those things before kickoff even happens as well, knowing what that roadmap looks like. I find it challenging, at least I have personally, finish kickoff and then say, okay, let's plan a follow-up to that. I think thinking about the event as a whole can be very helpful as well. So almost having that roadmap and socializing that with leadership, and already maybe even getting some of that buy-in before kickoff, so that maybe you flex things or you make changes as needed and adapt, but people understand that it's not meant to be a one-time event as much as a full approach for the year.
That's a great point, Michael. I'm thinking we should add that to this presentation, is in pre-kickoff, making sure that you're planning for post-kickoff. I should have said that. And Teresa has some good ideas on here about building scorecards of expected behavior changes with the line managers, and then monitor those scores monthly to discuss. And then also that Teresa said they have shared success videos from reps who applied the changes and won, which is great. There's no greater testament to, hey, this worked, than having a rep talk about that. Kristen's got their mascot is gorilla. We don't have a mascot. Michael, do you have a mascot?
Yeah. No, we don't, but I think that's.
I want one now. I want one.
Yeah, maybe I'll volunteer, right? Just Yeah, that's fun. I see a lot of people kind of tying their themes into their company, where they are in their evolution as well, which is very cool and thoughtful. Yeah, and I think to your point as well, I think that's a great idea, the scorecards of expected behavior changes, because I think sometimes that momentum, carrying it forward, it can be difficult. It's not that managers don't care or don't want to all the time, and maybe they don't feel empowered to, or that they have the resources for that. And maybe what we consider something very minimal or very simple, like a scorecard or something, it helps them feel empowered to have that conversation during their check-ins, their one-on-ones. And hopefully we have the opportunity to monitor behavior changes and things like that over time. And even if not, we hope that it's empowering them to have that resource or tool to do it, and a consistency across the company.
Yeah, and it helps them. I think it helps managers have that framework, right? And helps them with their coaching and what they should be coaching around. And then also, we all have pressure of measuring effectiveness and what we did. So apart from closed business, which is always a great metric, being able to do some of this interim, like scoring on behaviors, I think is a great idea as well.
Well, I know we've got a couple minutes left, and I want to make sure that we do leave some time for questions and things like that, Mary. But I mean, I guess to kind of recap, the journey we've been on today, if you will, pre to current to at kickoff to kind of that follow up. Do you have any like kind of final like key takeaways for us? What you do, what are the big things that you think about with each of those?
Yeah, I think, well, the big thing I think for me and I recommend for everybody is stay aligned with your sales leadership team and getting their participation, their agreement early on, so that everything can go smoothly and that there aren't any big surprises like that. I think that's going to be one of the big ones for people, is getting that, flip the paradigm. Like, this isn't a training event. There's learning that we want to take place. Here's what reps want. We know what reps want. Let's try and accommodate that. And if you can put the types of things that you need to accomplish into those buckets, what can we do before in kind of a run up to kickoff? What do we need to do during that's really important if we're together in person, or we have everybody together live virtually? And then what can we do after to make sure that we don't lose the good ideas, and then being able to continue that momentum? I think those are all the kind of the big things for me that I'm thinking about.
Yeah, absolutely. No, well put. Well put. Good. I mean, should we open it up or to questions now? I don't know if you have anything else to add, but we want to make sure we have time to answer anything out there.
I would only say have a plan B, because one year, not so fun story, on my way to kickoff in Boston, I was leaving my house and I went down the stairs and I fell, broke my ankle, and I missed kickoff.
Oh no.
So I had an excellent plan and other people carried it out, but have a good project plan, make sure there are other people who know what has to happen. That's my most famous kickoff story, that I missed kickoff. And
you did have a snowstorm one year, and since then we've always held it in the southern state. So
yeah, I hadn't thought too much about our weather. Yeah, plan B is always good if you're planning face to face, or if you get COVID. I mean, God forbid, right? But if you're sick or something, so probably a plan B is the other good thing to have.
Really good point. Really good point. Oh, geez, I just see someone said in the chat too, we held it in Vegas and it snowed in Vegas and stranded over 100 of us. Ooh, a sales force stranded in Vegas. That's like a start to a movie.
Oh, that's good.
Very good. Very good. Yeah. So any other questions? We'll hang on for a minute if you have any questions. As always, we've got our contact information on here as well, so feel free to connect with us and ask additional questions if they come up as well.
Yep, always happy to chat more. Reach me on LinkedIn. It's a good spot.
Yeah, I see something just did come into chat.
Too salesy. Oh, variety of groups.
Interesting. So the question, kind of summated is, does anyone expand their kickoff to other types of roles, and how do you do that so it doesn't just feel completely focused on sales, but motivates other groups as well? It's tough, and I think it has to be something that's like alignment from that top down as well, what the goals are. It goes back to some of those objectives of what are we really looking to do. Because I think the sales is going to, of course, say, well, it's called sales kickoff. Like that's kind of our focus here. But maybe there's separate breakout rooms. Maybe you kind of make sure that the people are in a track, if you will, that's kind of aligned, that still covers that main theme and brings it all together. Mary, I don't know if you've ever had.
I agree. I agree. If you have the luxury of being able to break people out into other spaces, we don't have that this year, but it's interesting. Yeah, too salesy. I think if there are points in the sales process where those teams need to collaborate, work together, that might be a good topic. Like that idea of like sales and marketing, how do we work well together? So even if you broke out into like 2 groups together at a time, that might be an alternative. And focusing on, I mean, if I look at those groups, it's the customer is one thing they all have in common. So if you could do some sessions that are focused on, hey, our customers, like, here's what's important that we do before, during the sales process, during implementation, during post, maybe he's talking about some of the customer. That's a theme that I would try to incorporate that everybody has in common.
Yeah, thinking about those core ideas that everybody's going to be having in common. If you have the opportunity for separate breakout sessions, may be worthwhile. But yeah, finding that collective. And I think sales enablement, right? I mean, I look at those groups and I'm like, we keep seeing that theme in the last couple of years. Bringing all these groups together essentially is like a key, that role that we play to bridge that gap. I think there's even been a few webinars through the Sales Enablement Society specific to that, and there might be some good ideas there.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, yeah, I'm seeing, did any other questions coming in on your side, Mary, that you've seen?
No, just Teresa, thank you for sharing so many great ideas today. We always appreciate the chat. She said they did breakout, set up table sessions, so different teams could have different topics and tracks, and the cross-pollination idea as well. Lots of fun. It's a lot. It can be stressful. So I think having a plan for each of these pre, during, and post, the more you can get planned out ahead of time, the better off you'll be. It's never easy. Something always comes up that you don't expect.
I'm guessing half the people are looking and saying, in about 4 minutes, I got to jump onto a kickoff call. Actually,
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like we're living and breathing. Yeah. So take a deep breath. We'll all get there together. Always happy to chat about these ideas again offline as well. So thank you everybody for all your input in the chat. We always have such great groups that join this webinar to keep those ideas flowing. Looking forward to seeing you next time. And then until then, have a great end of the year, holiday season, and potentially kickoff, depending on when that's scheduled for you as well.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Michael. It was great to do this with you today.
You as well.